welcome you to another tutorial which I'm going to be doing in acrylics. I'm going to be doing a seascape. Apparently I had posted one that was just done recently. I didn't really have a chance to do it on video for you. So now I'm taking this opportunity to do one for you in acrylics. So just to get you started, I already did my outline of how I wanted the layout. So basically here's the wave. Initially I started, it was a little bit too low, so I went up a little bit more. And this is going to be more of the foam wash and where the rocks are going to be from the inlet. This is a picture that I took while walking out to the beach with my family. So what we're going to do, I'm putting a lot more emphasis on the wave, so I make it a little bit bigger, and by perspective making this a little bit smaller because it really doesn't have that much importance to me. It's just mainly for the wave and just to show you the colors on how to do this. You see that I used blue because, well, mainly most of the picture is going to be in bluish green, so it fits perfectly. I didn't want to do brown, black, or really didn't feel like using vine charcoal. So on my palette I have Indian yellow, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, Prussian blue, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and white. So here we go. Let's start. So I'm going to use a number 4 flat. In order to mix the sky, I'm going to be using the Prussian blue. So I'm going to be using a lot of white, Prussian blue, a little bit of burnt sienna. And the burnt sienna is to tone down the blue. Okay? Because burnt sienna is almost kind of an orangey color, warmer color, so it's going to tone it down. So let's start. Yeah, that's a good color. So I'm laying on a thick coat, and I may go over with another coat of the same color. Not 100% sure yet, but it could happen. Because with acrylics, acrylics doesn't have the same covering power as oil does. You can't use it that thick. In order to do so, you actually have to use some medium to do that. All right, we mix up a little bit more of the same color. Prussian blue and a little burnt sienna and a lot of white. Another thing with acrylic, it's hard to match up the colors, so that's why I paint a little bit more impressionistic than anything with acrylics. Okay, so we basically have our sky in for now. I'm not too worried about the line. We're going to make it straight after. Alright, now I'm actually going to start with, I wanted to start with the wave, adding some of the color on here first so I can gauge how dark of blue, how dark of a blue I was going to add here for the background of the sea. You know what? Let me start with the wave. I'm going to start with the wave. So I'm using some of the Indian yellow that I have, ultramarine blue, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna to that mix. Now be careful with the Indian yellow, it's a pretty strong color, and then lots of white. I'm working off a reference, let me show it to you. This is one of the photos that I posted on my Facebook page, and this is the one that I'm going to be doing right now. And I will post the reference photos for you to see. So what I'm doing here is adding a middle tone color to start off with. Basically a wash, and then I'll work off of that afterwards. So there's probably going to be a little bit darker colors added into this eventually. Right now I'm not too concerned how well the colors go on there. It's just, all I'm doing is just covering the canvas and try to get a rough idea of where things are going to be, where the colors are going to go. As you can see, I'm not being too exact here. And if I feel like changing a little bit of a color, adding more high def, more like, or should I say not high def, but more chroma, I could do that. You know, it's your painting. You do whatever you want. If you want to add something that's emphasize something more in a painting than most of the other part of the painting, go for it. All right, now I'm adding a little bit of alizarin crimson to the same mix. Okay, then it's gonna gray that green down a little bit, and it's gonna give me the color that actually I'm looking for, and adding some white, and you'll see what it's gonna do. I'm not following the reference photo to a T, but trying to come close enough to it. There you go. Because this green might eventually change a little bit more. It's going to probably be more accentuated.
She would take all my candies. I said if she won't stop. Mama, Nicholas said she would take all my candy. I won't. It's pink. Purple.
Okay, I'm going to add maybe a little bit of Prussian blue as well, mixed into this. Give it some variation in that wave. I'm adding a little bit of ultramarine blue. Vary that a little bit with some Prussian. Some of the stuff may get covered up eventually, so nothing is nothing is fixed here. So for the foam wash, I'm gonna make this purplish blue. So it was an evening, so there was a lot of blue reflection inside in the foam section. Now I could have used a bigger brush to fill this in, but I don't know, I kind of like the way this flat brush, it's a Pro White from Jerry's Autorama. It's a synthetic bristle brush, and it's just flowing really, really nice with the acrylics. Add more water to make this flow even more. More blue. As you can see, I'm not being too careful how I'm putting these colors in, right? Alright. Because we're going to add and subtract to these colors. Some going to be lighter, some a little bit darker, some cooler, some warmer. I just want a variation. Okay, now we're going to work on, let me see, I want to work on this a little bit. So to make the darks for this, I'm going to use some ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of burnt umber. So now let's add this little this walkway. So I've added a little bit of burnt sienna to my mixture. There's another little rock here somewhere. I know I'm going over my drawing, but it's no problem. This is stuff you can fix after. Maybe another rock right here. There you go. I like that better. Gives it a nice little, you know, nice little composition. Give it a little bit of an angle. There we go. We'll fix that afterwards. Let me adjust this a little bit more. There's rocks at every different angle. There we go. Okay, enough with that. Now we're going to start working towards from the back. I'm going to be using Prussian blue. It's going to be a little bit dark, so I'm going to use a little bit of burnt umber and Prussian blue right here. Burnt umber and my little Prussian blue here. Make enough of a pile. Try to keep your trying to keep it straight. It will make kind of a greenish color, which is fine. Now remember, Prussian blue is a very strong color. I'm going to add also a little bit of ultramarine blue to this mixture. And burnt umber again. Just to vary it a little bit. Make more of the mixture, ultramarine blue, a little bit of Prussian, a little bit of burnt umber. Continue with the mix. Basically, it's just like a wash. Ooh, looks like I messed up a little bit over here. All right, we'll fix that after. Okay, I'm gonna go with a little bit of ultramarine blue. Warmer blue here. Eventually this is all going to come together. Now, I haven't said if I was going to add anything to this more than what the picture is already showing me. I may, just like I did my other painting. I already did one, and the painting kind of looked static to me, so I added rough seas to it. And I may do the same thing, do the same to this. I mean, it was the same day, the seas were kind of rough, but I haven't decided on it yet. Right now it's just blocking in colors. There. It's okay if I go over some of the dark colors. I'm not beholden to what I have already on there. Everything's flexible in the painting. Here I'm adding ultramarine blue and a little bit of alizarin crimson. Since this is mostly in shadow, so I'm making it a little bit darker. But there will be highlights in this area as well, because the sun was shining on some of the waves as they were crashing against the rocks. So all right, so now we're getting somewhere. The whole canvas is covered. I'm gonna start working on the foam area. The reason I didn't make this dark yet and work to light is because the foam is so bright itself, such a light color, that if I put a dark undertone, it's going to be very hard for me to make the foam the lightest light that I can make it. So I'm going to leave this on purpose and just probably work at the base of the wave here, make it a little bit darker tones, because it's probably going to reflect off the green. The green in the foam is going to reflect on the green is going to reflect off the crashing foam here a little bit, so it's going to be kind of a grayish tone, and then I'm going to work my lightest light on top, so you'll see what I mean. Lots of white. Now here's the mixture I've been using so far for the sky and then the wave. So what I did was add a little bit of Indian yellow to this mixed and a lot of white, so it's going to give me kind of this greenish foam. So I'm going to add it here, so it's giving me a grayish color. Just splatter it on there. Add a little bit of thicker paint if you have to cover good, because like I said, with acrylics, covering power is not as great as with oils, so you have to make it happen. Okay, here we go. A little bit here too, even though I'm going to work on the back part of this wave. Just all right, and then now I'm going to add my lightest light. I'm going to be putting a touch of Indian yellow, this pile right here. I'm using a touch, barely a touch of Indian yellow, because Indian yellow is very powerful with a lot of white. Since it is an evening color, an evening photo, you'll probably be able to see it on the screen now. Some of this yellow popping. I'm not going to make it perfect yet. I'm not going to cover it 100%. Just do it somewhat. Okay. Because now, from what I can see, how light this is, I'm going to have to start darkening up this area right under the wave and start adding more colors and greens to this. Probably work on the sky a little bit more. Add another layer of Prussian blue here. And just work my way around. At least now I have the mid-tone values and I know how to judge what needs to be darker, what needs to be lighter. Alright, actually I'm not gonna add another coat. I'm gonna just add different color on this area right here. But I am gonna work on the sky. So it's Prussian blue and burnt sienna again. gray the sky down a bit. Yeah, it's about the right color. It's okay if the under layer shows just a little bit. Right, add a little bit more Prussian blue. If you feel like your paint's starting to stick to the canvas as you're brushing it on, add more water. It's just telling you that, hey buddy, I'm getting dry here. Just add a little bit more fluid, medium, whatever you have, a retarder or yeah, retarding medium. Some people, that's what they use. I just use water. Or slow drying medium, I should have said. There you go. Okay, now that we have the sky, let's start working over here a bit. I'm gonna use my filbert brush. This is a number 2 filbert, because there was more of an ultramarine wave patterns going through the back here. So I'm gonna start adding that in. It's almost as if it was like a pure ultramarine, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna just add a little bit of blue. Ultramarine, I'm sorry, I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna, tone that ultramarine blue a little bit, maybe a little bit of white. Hope you can see that. Ultramarine blue. Put some water on my brush. Just like a skippity hop. That's basically what I'm doing. And I may add colors in between those colors I just put in. Heck, I might even scumble this color in. Why not? There. A little bit choppy. I'm not covering the whole thing, as you can see. Now I'm going to use a small round brush. This is a 2.0 round brush. I'm going to go in between those colors. Maybe with the mid-tone pure ultramarine with a lot of water on it, in it. Almost like a glaze. A little bit everywhere, just arbitrarily everywhere. There you go. I got a little bit too much water in this area here. Choppy strokes. Just to trick the eye into thinking there's areas of actual beautiful blue water in the background there. And this would be a little bit more obvious if you were looking at the picture close up as I am in real time and not through the lens of a camera. Okay, see, there was too much water in this area. So to remedy that, go back over it. I just wiped off the excess water. Gonna go back over it, because if you just keep adding more wet medium over it, it's just gonna slip and it's gonna not adhere. So now I'm basically going pretty much almost dry medium over it. Let me add a little bit of white to thicken this up. Okay. I know it looks like I might have messed up, but nope. This is fixable. There you go. All right, we covered that hot mess, didn't we? All right, good. Now coming towards the front of the painting, we're going to use some Prussian blue, just pure Prussian blue and white. Okay, let's see how that works out for me. It's probably a little bit too light. Darken it up a little bit. Let me add a little bit of ultramarine blue to it. There you go. That's better. Same choppy strokes. So I use the same color. I use Prussian blue and white as my primary colors, and I added a little bit of ultramarine blue to make it a little bit more on the bluer side of this color, since it was too light initially. So choppy strokes in there. And it's okay if you go a little bit higher than into the dark blue. It's almost like you're mixing things in a little bit. And you come down here. We're in this grayed out area. It's just you're tricking your brain's senses, what it sees. Okay, it just gives it that much more visual interest. There. I mean, I could go on for hours doing this like this. Okay. I might add a little bit darker blue coming forward. Add a little bit of burnt sienna to that blue mixture. And the blue that I'm using is ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, too dark. Let's add a little bit of white to this. Here we go. I can work with that. Gray it down. I'm using a very fluid medium to this to make it flow a little bit easier. Now, I'm not 100% dedicated to this. I could change this up. If I don't like the way this is going to come out over here on this area, and I want to add more waves to it, I can. This is not, this is not set in stone. Now, from the picture that I see, there was another wave back here coming. So I can use a little bit of burnt sienna Burnt sienna almost acts as a dark yellow in the water. Instead of using Indian yellow, I'm just using burnt sienna to... Okay. Let me see. Yeah. There was another wave coming. I'm adding just a little bit of white because this is too dark. You see, I did it right on top of those. Yeah, there's another wave coming, definitely. I'm using Prussian blue. Prussian blue and burnt sienna. A lot of water to make this flow because all I want really is I'm skimming through this with almost like a glaze. Okay. I might even add some foam over here. I don't know yet. All right. Now got to give this a base as well. You'll see what I mean by base in a second. Add some ultramarine blue to this. Just to mix this together. So I'm kind of fading that wave. I'm giving it directional. Notice how here it's wider and here it's skinnier. I did that on purpose, so it almost gives it the vision as if it's the tendency as if it's coming towards this way. You know, the wave is coming that angle and not just like coming straight at me. I'm giving it more. I'm giving a visual angle as if it's coming, you know, on the inside. All right. Let me add a little bit of a highlight over here, which will be the same mixture that I use to make the base of that wave, plus a lot of white. To show there's like an area between both wave, show like describe space between each one. There you go. Use some of this mixture to mix in with this base a little bit, just to make it wider so it kind of blends in somewhat. All right. So I think we took care of that. This is bothering me a little bit here. Here we go. Some people use masking tape and a ruler. I don't do that. Most of the time I'm afraid that it's gonna mess up my painting more than anything. Like it's gonna have bleed-ins and the tape's gonna rip and paint's gonna go, you know, whatever. It's like I said, I like to keep things more on an impressionistic side. Okay, now to the wave. Moment of truth. This is where it all starts. Okay, so now I'm going to make this a little bit darker to bring out the foam a little bit more. So in order to do that, I'm going to use ultramarine blue, a little bit of Indian yellow, little bit of burnt sienna and some white. Let's see what kind of color we get. Probably more blue. A little bit of Indian yellow. Let's see what kind. It's probably a little bit too dark. It's a little bit more on the green side, greenish blue side. So I'm going to add a little bit more Prussian blue and okay, I can work with that. I'm adding a lot of water. See now how this white is coming out even nice and darker? I added a little bit more ultramarine blue to this. I'm making this dark because I'm going to put highlights. There are highlights that are going to come down here at some point. Okay, now we're going to start feathering in the colors. I'm going to add actually a little bit more engine yellow to this mixture and a slight bit more of Prussian. Okay, I'm going to use a little bit bigger brush. This is kind of annoying. I'm going back to the number 4 flat, using the same colors. And a little bit of white. Cover more space quickly. There we go. That's better. And notice how this is popping out even more here. I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow, a little bit more white. I'm basically creating a wash because I'm using a lot of water. And then towards the base here, it's more, towards this base, going to be more in the reddish tones. So I'm going to add a wash. Other colors are going to be introduced as you will see, maybe a little bit darker. Attempt to blend these two colors together a little bit. So what I did was use ultramarine blue, a little bit of Indian yellow to the mixture of burnt sienna that I used here. Go with the direction of the wave. All this is going to be a little bit darker over here as well. Ultramarine blue, a little bit of alizarin crimson, some white, burnt sienna, it looks choppy, but I'm quite okay with it. The water is choppy anyway. So I'm only really mimicking the water. And sometimes by doing this kind of technique, you kind of imitate Mother Nature's brush strokes. Because all I'm doing here is just making this base a little bit darker. And you'll see why in a minute. So I'm just using variations of ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, even Prussian blue. Because that wash is like multicolor, and trying to match everything is not easy. Okay. Let me introduce some yellow to this, some Indian yellow. There you go. And white to mix everything in. Make another wash. See, if this was in oils, I'd have to get this right the first time. Chop. Glaze on top of glaze, one after the other, just so I'm making it chop, chop, chop. Like I said, this gives more visual interest to the painting. Here I'm going to add more ultramarine blue. Wash. And a little bit of Prussian at the same time. And you're going to see why in a minute. Okay, so now we're just going to start perhaps working a little bit on the highlights. You know what, hold on, I'm going to actually work, well no, I'm not. Yes, I am going to work on the highlights now. So a lot of the highlights are going to be in a lot of white, Indian yellow, so let's see, I'm gonna, there, this works. Actually, let me add a little bit of blue to this to gray it down, since it's going to be further back. Actually, I used burnt umber to gray it down a little bit. So just, you know, to give indication of water foam just going through here. So we have, you know, a little bit of sea foam. And you can wipe this off. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to put a pure color up here. I'm trying to get the paint to, not the paint, the brush to a fine point. I could use a liner for this, which, you know what? While I'm at it, I am going to do that. Okay. Just to give some indication. Some people ask me, well, how am I able to get so much detail? Or now you got your answer. A liner or a rigger brush will help with that. Va dans ta chambre, Nicolas, s'il te plaît. Va dans ta chambre. Wipe some of the colors off. Now I'm going to dip into the blues, because some of this wash was in the shadow, so I'm going to use like a light blue. Not everything was, you know, as a highlighted wash. This will start being the tedious part of the painting. All the wash lines and all that stuff. So here we go. I'm just basically glazing over that yellow. Here. And if I want, I can still use Prussian blue, a little bit of burnt sienna to go back over this and wipe it off a little bit. Just basically glazing the color on there, just light stroke. And then just use your finger. Use your finger to wipe it off. See the effects that it gives, how well blended it looks. That was a bad move on this part. There was too much water in this area, right over here. So let me add a little bit more glaze here. Here we go. Now it makes it look like here. That's a little bit better. So maybe, you know what? Add Prussian blue to that Indian yellow and that white. It's just gonna make it look a little bit like greenish yellow. And that's okay. And the reason why I say that is because when we do the wash here, you want to distinguish the difference between the two. It's hard with acrylics because you can't blend just like you can with oil. Define those rocks a little bit more. Okay, now we're working towards the wave over here. So it's going to be a lot of white on this area. Very little, and I mean very little Indian yellow. This is where all the powerful highlights are going to come. And see, luckily I did the shadow over here. Now you can see how everything is just popping. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to use a different brush to do this. I have an old brush that's kind of frayed. As you can see, the tip, it's really flagged, and it's a number 1. It was a flat brush. Guess what? Not anymore. So I'm going to use a lot of white. I mean, barely a hint of Indian yellow. Oops, that was too much. Here we go. Sometimes old brushes, folks, are useful. Don't be afraid to go into that green here and make it splash marks. Some of that Indian yellow really got on that brush. I'm going to have to hide that. Now I'm defining the edges the way I want it to be. Notice how this is becoming, at first it was pretty grayed out, looked very bluish. Now look how it pops against the yellow. And I'm going to vary the edges a little bit of how high the mist is going to be, and where how far down the highlights are going to come down. And you could do like the Bob Ross style and then just fling it around. Okay, a little bit of the wave here. Go in a direction of the wave. Here, just wipe it. Put on the color. Wipe it a little bit. Just to give a little bit of an impression. I've seen the back of that wave just roll in. But you know, this is what has to go into the job, you know. If that's what I have to do to trick your eye into thinking that that this is like somewhat photorealism, well, that's what you got to do. Now, this was not in the original photo, what you see here. You could not see any of that back of the wave coming through. That's just me adding it, thinking, hey, I kind of like that. So you can see the continuation of the wave. And let me add a little bit more of this highlight that I had here, just to continue with it. Bring this a little bit higher. Now let's work on the foam line here. This is going to be a little bit tricky because the color, I'm having a hard time distinguishing the color on this. Looks like it's a little bit of ultramarine blue, Indian yellow, and a lot of white. Let's test it out, see what happens. Yes. And then I'll give highlights where it needs to be. So this is basically a grayed out color. This part's going to get really tedious real quick. Just arbitrarily put the colors in, and we're going to add highlights to these colors. Remember, you have to describe the direction of the wave. I'm kind of going by the photo. I'm trying to follow some of the foam pattern, not all of them, because like almost literally impossible for me to do that. Just some of them. Remember, this is just the base color. So now I'm going to be working in the back over here, a little bit of foam from that one wave that I did in the back here. Use your fingers if you have to. This is from the waves crashing on the rocks here in the back. It's basically like indication of water. Indication of water splashing on the walkway. Here. Well, I think this will be the end of the painting. I'm pretty happy the way this turned out. So I hope you learned something from this. Feel free to leave any comments that you may have, or critiques, or if you have any questions that you want to ask about the process in this painting. Feel free to let me know. Okay, I thank you guys for watching this video, and hopefully I will have another one for you soon. So all that's left to do is just sign a painting and call it done. You guys have a great evening. Thank you again. See you next time.